chaos itself now defines the rapidly deteriorating reality of the Women's National Basketball Association, as the league stands on the edge of its most anticipated opening night in its 30-year history, while mainstream sports media and carefully polished executive statements continue to project an image of perfection, claiming soaring revenue, seamless mainstream acceptance, and complete harmony between players and front offices. The reality, beneath the surface, tells a far more unstable story. One that becomes clear the moment you step outside the corporate messaging and into the voices of millions of financially invested, deeply engaged fans actively fueling the league's growth. Behind the headlines, a volatile shift is unfolding across social media, comment sections, and ticketing platforms, where a loud and coordinated wave of frustration signals that the so-called honeymoon phase is over and the once passive gratitude toward the league has been replaced by urgency, expectation, and pressure, as fans begin demanding immediate and uncompromising change from the WNBA establishment, warning that if those demands are ignored, the most lucrative and transformative financial opportunity the sport has ever seen could collapse just as quickly as it arrived, the only channel on the internet that refuses to shield incompetent front offices and instead cuts straight through the noise to expose the raw, unfiltered reality of professional basketball operations. Today, we are stepping directly into the escalating chaos surrounding the league, breaking down the firm, non-negotiable demands emerging from an increasingly furious fan base, and exposing why the WNBA front office appears genuinely unsettled by the very momentum and backlash they helped set into motioned reality.
There's an overhead shot of this game, and you can already see there were a ton of empty seats in this place. A ton. And my goodness, this overhead shot, literally, the account that put this out, tons of empty seats, and this was pre-halftime. Correct. There was about 5 minutes left before the half when this shot.
Emerging at the center of the most intense wave of fan criticism is a single, pressing demand focused on player safety and the growing perception of inconsistent officiating across the league, as the WNBA, now holding what many consider a generational spotlight through Caitlin Clark's unprecedented global appeal, faces mounting frustration from viewers who believe she is being exposed to excessive physicality, ranging from constant off-ball contact and persistent grabbing to aggressive defensive pressure. While referees appear reluctant to apply the rules with uniform consistency, creating an impression of imbalance in protection standards, this situation has sparked a strong and rapidly expanding reaction from supporters who understand the physical demands of elite competition, yet are increasingly concerned about long-term consequences if such contact continues without correction, resulting in louder calls for immediate and systemic reform in officiating practices, stricter and more consistent enforcement of collective bargaining regulations specifically designed to eliminate illegal holding and contact, and a standard of player protection aligned with other major professional leagues where superstar athletes are actively safeguarded, as voices across the basketball community emphasize that elite talent should be protected rather than placed at unnecessary risk, since from the perspective of fans, failure to address these concerns now threatens not only the integrity of competition but also the league's credibility, trust, and long-term stability and respect. At its core, the message from fans has become unmistakably blunt and uncompromising. Officials must tighten enforcement, protect the players who are directly driving attendance and revenue, and address escalating concerns before the damage shows up in falling viewership. Yet the frustration does not end there, because an equally powerful wave of criticism is now aimed at general managers and front office executives who supporters believe are consistently failing to construct legitimate, championship-caliber rosters around generational talent, fueling a growing sense of wasted opportunity and repeated misjudgments in roster building. This anger is especially visible in the ongoing scrutiny of the Indiana Fever, where fans argue that despite securing cornerstone players like Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, the franchise has not successfully surrounded them with reliable two-way veterans or steady backup guards capable of sustaining high-level competitiveness, a concern intensified after they witnessed the bench being outscored 36-7 in a single quarter against the Dallas Wings, a stretch that many point to as a glaring example of deeper structural weaknesses. While Kelsey Mitchell continues to battle inconsistency and the coaching staff rotates through developing role players, pressure on the organization has only grown louder. And from the fans' perspective, the expectations are no longer negotiable, demanding full accountability, smarter roster construction, and potential leadership changes if basic competitive standards are not met, because in their view, simply maintaining leads, managing rotations effectively, and building dependable depth should represent the absolute baseline of professionalism within the league, and that reality now defines the entire debate unfolding around the franchise.
Aside of losing the announcers, the clarity was real good. So there's that. Crisp picture, just no audio outside of the 2,000 fans that were screaming. Wow. I gotta tell you, guys, I think this season is going to surprise a lot of people, and maybe not in such a great way at all.
Fundamentally, this shift represents the third and most financially critical development in the entire situation, as fans are no longer driven by loyalty or emotional obligation toward the league, but instead by pure entertainment value, and they are increasingly aware of, and willing to actively use, their economic power as leverage. For more than 2 decades, the WNBA benefited from a deeply loyal audience that supported the league regardless of product quality, game consistency, or overall experience. But that era is now fading as a new generation of fans enters the ecosystem with very different expectations, focusing heavily on performance standards, competitive balance, and the overall viewing experience. And when those expectations are not met through issues such as inconsistent officiating, questionable coaching decisions, or lack of roster depth, they are no longer responding with patience or emotional support, but instead choosing to disengage financially and withhold their spending. This transformation is already becoming visible in real time through attendance and pricing behavior, where even traditionally strong markets like the Indiana Fever have experienced noticeable pressure, including reduced turnout in preseason contexts and heavy reliance on discounted ticket strategies, signaling that fans are no longer willing to accept premium pricing for what they perceive as an inconsistent or underwhelming product on the floor, instead demanding clear and measurable value for their money. And any disconnect between ticket prices and on-court quality is now being met with direct and intentional financial resistance, marking a significant shift in the league's operating reality, where consumer expectations and market-driven accountability are beginning to outweigh legacy loyalty, and the message from the fan base is increasingly clear. If the product does not meet professional standards, the spending will stop, and in today's attention-driven sports economy, that pressure carries immediate and serious consequences for the league's long-term stability and growth ahead. Vacant seats at a $12 game stood as a clear warning shot aimed directly at the WNBA executive board, signaling a consumer base becoming less patient and far more selective. And instead of carefully acknowledging these concerns, the league and certain team front offices have, in the eyes of critics, responded with corporate messaging and overly polished public relations framing that fails to confront the underlying issues. This approach, fans argue, is exactly what transforms normal frustration into full-scale backlash, especially when legitimate concerns about roster depth and team performance, such as reactions following a heavy loss by the Indiana Fever to the Dallas Wings, are met not with transparency about necessary improvements or active roster solutions, but with social media content designed to manufacture optimism rather than reflect reality. And the Fever's decision to post a heavily produced hype video after criticism is seen by some supporters as tone-deaf, reinforcing perceptions of a widening disconnect between front office communication and on-court execution, intensifying demands for authenticity, direct accountability, and honest acknowledgement of team weaknesses instead of branding-driven deflection. This growing tension extends beyond individual franchises into league leadership itself, with scrutiny increasingly directed toward Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, while comments attributed to NBA Commissioner Adam Silver declining to publicly confirm aspects of her future became another flashpoint in an already escalating debate as tensions between leadership, players, and fans continued to intensify. During last season's WNBA Finals, controversy even spilled into the broadcast environment, with ESPN reportedly blurring sections of the crowd amid visible fan anger directed at league leadership. While players such as Nafisa Collier publicly raised concerns about structural and organizational issues, further amplifying scrutiny. At the same time, collective player action, including All-Star Weekend protests and highly strained CBA negotiations, fueled fears of a potential lockout scenario that could disrupt future seasons, underscoring how fragile relations had become between the league office and its athletes. While critics argue that Engelbert's continued emphasis on financial growth and expansion narratives appears increasingly disconnected from the frustrations expressed by both players and segments of the fan base, deepening the perception gap between league leadership and the lived competitive stage.
Couple things pretty evident tonight, I would say, during this game. Lack of depth, and clearly, look, before everybody starts saying, oh, but that was right before halftime, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I know some of you are going to try to support this. That's great. But, I'm supporting the team and trying to, but that doesn't mean fans aren't right.
Pressure is reaching its peak as the regular season opener approaches, placing the Women's National Basketball Association under an intense national spotlight. And what makes this moment especially significant is not just the anticipation of a new season, but the weight of expectations that now surrounds every possession, every whistle, and every coaching decision. Critics are framing this as a defining test of whether the league can finally match its rapidly expanding visibility with a consistently high-quality product, because if opening night mirrors the same issues that have dominated recent weeks, controversial officiating decisions, uneven roster execution, and visible breakdowns in late-game structure, the frustration already building within the fan base could escalate even further into open, sustained backlash. Concerns around player protection remain at the center of the conversation, particularly regarding how physical contact is being officiated and whether the current standards are sufficient to safeguard top talent over the course of a long season, while parallel concerns about roster construction continue to grow, with critics pointing to limited bench depth and inconsistent rotations as factors that could undermine competitiveness in marquee matchups where expectations are highest. At the same time, attendance patterns, ticket demand, and overall engagement metrics are being closely tracked as real-world indicators of whether the surge in media attention is actually translating into long-term consumer investment or simply temporary curiosity. In response, fans have increasingly and clearly outlined what they expect moving forward: more consistent officiating that removes confusion from the game, stronger accountability within front offices when roster decisions fail to produce results, more intelligent team building that supports star players with reliable depth and balanced roles, and a more transparent form of communication from league leadership that avoids overly polished public relations narratives in favor of direct acknowledgement of problems and solutions that actually address on-court reality. With scrutiny intensifying from both supporters and critics alike, the league now enters a critical opening stretch where every aspect of its operation, performance, structure, and messaging will be evaluated in real time, determining whether current momentum continues to accelerate or begins to weaken under the pressure of unmet expectations. What makes this moment particularly pivotal is that urgency is no longer a background theme but the central force shaping the entire conversation around the league's direction, shifting focus toward whether immediate adjustments can stabilize confidence and sustain growth through tangible improvements, such as clearer officiating standards that prioritize consistency over interpretation, more strategic roster building that reduces over-reliance on individual stars, leadership communication that prioritizes honesty over branding, and a tighter alignment between the product on the court and the expectations of a rapidly expanding global audience that is now watching more closely than ever before. Ultimately, the central question has moved beyond speculation and into immediacy. Which single adjustment, if implemented right now, has the power to reset trust, elevate the competitive quality of the league, and prevent the season from being defined by controversy rather than the basketball itself? Because the answer to that question will not only shape opening night, but will also set the tone for the entire direction and identity of this era going forward.